Miss Lenore, holy, things have been busy for you. I have seen you everywhere, not only interview after interview, but the circuit in terms of conventions. Have you had a chance to catch your breath yet?
Well, I'm trying to because I just got back from Chicago and Philadelphia, but I have a movie I'm shooting on Friday. So I'm spending the next couple of days memorizing lines and stuff for that. And that's going to be exciting for the fans who know. Do you know Batten Sun Productions?
I don't know.
They are the ones, they do a lot of incredible fight videos with between like iconic characters, but they have done a movie called The White Dragon with Jason David Franks, who was the Green Power Ranger. And it's
Right.
the last movie that he did before he sadly passed away. And so they've written a role in it for me to kick off the movie. So that's what I'm going to do on Friday.
Well, what more can I say about X-Men 97 that hasn't been said already? It's been fantastic and very warmly received with good reason. And I gotta say, man, have you and Allison, I think, have been, not to take anything away from the rest of the cast, but you have been carrying this season, especially kind of the latter half. Have you felt, I guess, a little bit of pressure with this coming back, or are you just feeling all the love at this point?
As an actor, I live for emotional roles. I love the extremes. I love being able to go to those, plummet those depths and go to the heights. And so this was a gift for me to be able to do that with this character who I know so well and who I love really a lot. Of course, Gambit and the death of Remy LeBeau, who has been, Rogue's flame for so long, was devastating. And so I was really glad to be able to have an opportunity to express my own grief because, as I've said in a number of interviews, I was already grieving the death of my young niece who had passed away several months before at the age of 17, Maya, her name was, from cancer. And so I decided to put all of that on into my role, all of that grief and angst, so that other people who might be also feeling sad or grieving people that they've lost, that they could hear my voice and it would resonate emotionally with them so that it might give them an opportunity to feel their feelings and therefore have a kind of cathartic experience and hopefully heal. And I'm hearing from a lot of people that that is exactly what's been happening.
That episode was devastating, and that performance was tremendous. On that note, I got the opportunity to interview the lovely Jubilees, both Allison and Holly. And what was great is Allison spoke about the fact that she and Cal had a very similar relationship to what you see Wolverine and Jubilee have. So I was curious, I didn't get a chance necessarily to work with AJ all that much, but what was your relationship like with Chris, working with him for 5 or more years in the past? And how did that kind of factor into the performance as well?
Well, when we did the original series, we were all became very bonded like a family because we would come into the same studio in person and oftentimes record together. Uh, and if we had scenes with one other character, they would oftentimes bring the two of us in and we would play off each other. So we all got along really, really well, and we had a great time doing that. This time around, of course, we're all in different cities, and because of COVID, studios have become used to now recording people on their own. And so I was imagining the character of Gambit when I was doing my lines. And I finally got to meet AJ this past year when we did a record together. And we just got along like a house on fire. So we have a very good relationship. Chris has passed on the mantle to AJ, and AJ is has taken the torch and is running with it. And it was a delight to work with both of them.
So let's take a step back a little bit because I want to go back to kind of let us know what this 30-year journey was like, because how did you even hear that this reboot or sequel, in a sense, was even an option? And did you kind of dismiss it? And you know what, what I'm hearing from the original cast as well, a lot of them kind of thought, maybe I shouldn't be doing it. Like you said, pass the torch. What was your thought process? How did you hear about it? And how did you finally, once again, land on the fact that you're going to play Rogue once again?
Well, it came out of the blue. I had basically left acting for the last 12 years to go into politics as an elected representative of the people in Nova Scotia in Canada. And so I hadn't given much thought to acting, but then I suddenly got this call. Well, actually, it was an email to begin with from a friend who said, "Hey, Lenore, I'm friends with somebody who works with Disney, and they're trying to find you to talk to you about a project." And I wrote back, "Well, if it's real, if that's a real thing, give them my phone number and just get them to call me." Because I thought, what are the odds really of Disney trying to track me down? And then I suddenly got a call, and it was Meredith Lane, who was the casting director and then the voice director for the new series, saying yes, that they wanted to have me audition for something, a project. She didn't say exactly what it was, but she said, "But I think you might recognize it." And she said, "Do you mind if I send it to you in an email and then you record it and send it back to me?" And I said, "Sure, I'm happy to do that." And when I got the lines, I realized it was Rogue in the X-Men, because they were lines I had actually done in the past series. So I went, "Oh, okay, so it's Rogue. All right." About 3 weeks to a month later, I got word back from Meredith that they really liked what they heard, and the producers wanted to meet with me on Zoom. So I said, "Okay." So then we set up a Zoom meeting. And again, I read with Meredith, doing the other lines this time. And after I just done one pass through like a couple of the scenes, Bo DeMeo said, "Lenore, oh my God, we are all here going out of our skins because you are Rogue. We grew up with you in our heads. We love you. Would you please come back and play Rogue again for Marvel and Disney in this new series we're going to be doing?" And I was like, You had me at hello, sugar." So that's how it happened.
That's amazing. What I
Yeah.
loved about the original cast coming back for the roles that they originated is you can hear that voices have changed. There's nothing wrong with that. I was discussing it with my sister and I said, with Cal and even George, there's a maturity to Beast now. There's an element to the voice now that I think works so well for the character, and et cetera, et cetera. You've got this 30-year gap, but then all of a sudden you have to play a 30-year-old rogue, give or take again. Did you feel that you had to, you said you kind of found her right again, but
Yeah.
you change as a human being as well. So how did you kind of maybe ignore some of the experiences or the maturity that you've gathered over the last little while to get back into the character?
Well, sugar, I'm an actor. And actors act. So when I do like voice acting, I can play anything from a little tiny baby or a little girl or a little boy right through to an old crotchety old woman. I play superheroes. I play a million different roles, and I have my entire life. And so I just put myself in the zone of what the character is, and I change my voice accordingly. And being a singer, was a singer first. I was doing musicals, then I was singing in bands, and then I became I got discovered at the age of 19 for to play a role of Marilyn Monroe in a rock opera that was on the life of Marilyn Monroe. And at 20, I did the role, and I had to play her at 16, Norma Jean Baker, young, innocent, naive, and all the way through to her glory years as an actress, and then right to her demise at the age of 36. So again, my entire life I have played very extreme emotions, different types of characters. And so it's not really that much of a stretch for me. I can play a character at any age and change my voice accordingly.
Okay, I got one. You're segueing my questions perfectly for me, so thank you for that. Because you touched on the fact you're a singer, and one of the most iconic things about Rogue's original performance was that blood-curdling scream that you could do when she was either going crazy or was overwhelmed with telepathy or whatever. How did you do that? How do you do that without blowing your vocal cords? Because that is ingrained in my brain, that specific scream.
Thank
So, I mean, was that part of your singing training, or how did you do it?
Well, yes. I mean, as an actor and as a singer, you learn to use your diaphragm to project and to use your voice properly. I also played the trumpet when I was younger. So I played in school band, and I chose the trumpet because it was really loud. And you have to develop breath control. So your lungs are learning to have a great capacity for air. I used to practice outside the house in the yard because my mother didn't want me practicing in the house. So I would play my trumpet to the cows that were going by in the neighboring field. And I also practiced singing out in the fields. I'd go for long walks and I'd sing at the top of my lungs. And I think that all of that helped. And then in my 20s, I ended up being cast in a lot of horror films. So I was like a Canadian scream queen. So I got to scream a lot in the movies. And so by the time Rogue came along, I was 31 when I first played Rogue. And that the scream just came from all of the above. That's how I developed the ability to do that. And it doesn't hurt my voice.
That's amazing.
Thank
It hurts my throat just even thinking about it. That's
you.
hilarious.
I know.
Once again, great segue. I wanted to talk about your parents because when I'm not doing this entertainment journalism thing, I'm a high school art teacher.
Oh,
And
wow.
your mom was a teacher, your dad was a professor, correct? What did they teach?
Well, my dad taught creative writing and early childhood development. And he believed that, that the early years of a child are the most important years for setting them up for success in life. And that's why we need to have good educators looking after and educating kids from a very early age on, giving them the opportunity to learn how to read, to love books, to love writing, to be creative, to play sports, to let out their energy in healthy ways. And so dad was really good at that. And my mom taught science and geography and history. And so she developed in me a great love for history and fashion, for heritage. And so I really put a lot of world events in perspective with what has happened in the past. Because as they say, as you probably know as a teacher, if you forget your past, then you're doomed to repeat it. And I sadly see a lot of things happening in the world where countries are slipping backwards towards a very scary type of authoritarianism or fascism, which, we know from history what happens there. And I don't want to see that happening in the world and in North America.
Yeah. Well, your time, spent as a politician, I was reading about that, and you had an amazing quote that said, "The fight for social justice never sleeps,"
Exactly.
which I found so not only profound but ironic in a sense, coincidental that you're then playing this character, this iconic character that you're known for, which of course the subtext is all about social justice and racism and acceptance and things like that.
Right.
Not to make light of that, but Rogue had so many great colloquialisms and turns of phrases. Do you remember which one would have been a favorite of yours that kind of stuck out?
Well, of course, we have, you look about as nervous
This is
as
a
a
long-tailed
long-tailed.
cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
That's one of my favorites. And in the new one, I love,
Thanks
thanks
for
for
the
the
dance.
dance, sugar.
But Remy was right. Some things are deeper than skin.
I love that one too. And then the one from The Cure, back in the original series, which was when Rogue goes to try and get rid of her powers because, she can't touch anybody. She can never be in love. She can never be intimate. But she finds out through trying to get rid of them that, in fact, her powers are what make her who she is, warts and all. And she says, there ain't no cure for who you are. I reckon I am my
powers and the good they can do for my friends and for the whole world. I reckon maybe I can live with that after all. Thanks anyway, Doc.
And I love that as well.
Yeah, really good writing. When it comes to social justice, Bo DeMaio went online recently and he was discussing how his experience, not only as a gay man, but a person of color, really shaped a lot of the writing. And you can see it and you pick up on that subtext right away. The interesting thing is, I think, about the X-Men is even as a cisgendered white male, there was something about it where, it spoke to me, obviously. And Beast especially was one of my favorite characters. And I liked Beast because what teenager doesn't understand not fitting in or feeling like they look different? I'm curious, how did you relate to Rogue specifically? Because there's a lot to her, especially her loneliness. How did you kind of find, a fellow spirit in that character?
I was born in Australia and we moved to Canada when I was 8. So I had to leave behind all the kids I had grown up with and my family, like the big, larger family with all my cousins. And my dad had 4 brothers and sisters. So we had a big Zan clan. And I had this Australian accent and it was so strong that a lot of kids would ask me, well, what language do they speak in Australia? I mean, and we moved a number of times. We went to so I ended up going to a bunch of different schools, right from like grade 3 on to grade 10. We settled in Truro and we stayed there for my high school. But it was hard. I had to keep reimagining myself and trying to fit in, and it was lonely. And I retreated to a world of imagination. I wrote poetry, I wrote short stories. My dad helped with that because he was a writer as well. And then once I became an actor, I was traveling the world, oftentimes alone. And so I can really relate to Rogue in her search for where to belong and where is her quote unquote tribe.
Once again, you did my job perfectly, because I was going to ask you, again, as a voice actor, I remember Chris being interviewed probably 30 years ago when he was talking about how he kind of tried to find Gambit's voice and accent. And he said, and he grew up with a lot of experience with friends who were Quebecois. And so he said, I brought a little bit of that into it. You came from Australia, like you said, spent time in Saskatchewan, I believe, Halifax, eventually landed in Toronto for this role. That is a myriad of accents. And especially for those of people who don't know, who might be watching or reading, the East Coast of Canada has some very strong accents as well. So yeah, a lot of influences. How did you find Rogue? How did you find that great Southern drawl?
Having been an Australian to begin with, Australians, the accent is a very broad. It's very, g'day, g'day, g'day. It's very broad. And Southerners have a tendency to have their mouths in a similar way. So the sound came very naturally. And I started doing American musicals, like Broadway musicals, when I was 15, like in school at first, in high school, but then later on also in professional theater. So the roles I was playing had to have American accents. I played like Adelaide in Guys and Dolls, who's got sort of a New York Bronx kind of accent. I did Ado Annie in Oklahoma. I did a lot of these roles and they needed American accents. So at a very early age, I started training my voice that way. And so by the time Rogue came along, I had actually played a number of Southerners and also the animated series I'd booked just before X-Men was a show called Stunt Dogs. And I played a character called Sizzle, who was the lead female, and she was a Southerner. So I got to practice the Southern accent all the way through that show, and then X-Men was only the second show that I booked.
You kept teasing about you ain't seen nothing yet in terms of Rogue going rogue. What can you tease even further about the second season of this show? Have you guys even started recording the second season?
Yeah, I've basically recorded the second season, but all I can say is that Rogue is on a mission to find justice for Remy and for all of those other mutants who were murdered. And that is her number one goal, and she will continue on that until she is done.
I can ask the same question because being a Toronto boy, I've asked this of any of the original cast that I can. And you might be, I think, perhaps uniquely qualified to answer this because you've lived in Toronto and Vancouver and parts of the East Coast. What is it about Canadians that you believe make us possibly the best X-Men? I won't say that because that might be insulting. Might be insulting your American castmates. But what do you think it was about Canadians that maybe we just kind of understand the X-Men?
We have great actors in Canada. That's the thing. Most of us we have gotten our teeth wet by doing a lot of theater, doing movies, doing television, doing radio dramas. Many of the original actors on the show, if you look at who they are, we were all radio. We also did radio dramas, and like John Colicos, David Hemblin, all of these actors were Don Franks, fabulous theater actors, fabulous radio drama actors, and just fabulous in movies and television. So I think, this speaks to the wealth of talent that we have in Canada and the well-roundedness of our performers, who are oftentimes, by the way, unsung heroes. It's hard in Canada for actors to get recognized and get the acknowledgement that they really deserve.
Hey Real students, thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe to Real School, click that round Real School logo right beside me. Also click that damn notification bell so you're aware of all of Real School's new content. You can follow me on Twitter, and of course, if you get anything out of Real School, you can always give a little back. Just click the link in the description below or the button down there, and you can become part of my Patreon team.